It's a very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Inside the Middle East, our show that brings you all the latest news and developments from the Middle East and the region. I'm Angie Meher joining you for today's edition of the show, and we begin straight away with a look at some of the news making the headlines. We begin straight away with the recent developments in Lebanon, where 4 people, including a school principal, were killed in an Israeli strike on a vehicle in southern Lebanon in one of the deadliest attacks in weeks. The attack tests a ceasefire announced last month that has sharply reduced violence in southern Lebanon. The Israeli military said it had struck a vehicle carrying 4 people it said were approaching what it calls a security zone in southern Lebanon. A health official said the strike took place in an area that local residents had considered safe from attacks. However, the attacks by Israeli drones have continued even since the beginning of the ceasefire. Israel, meanwhile, has established what it describes as a security zone extending about 10 kilometers into southern Lebanon along the border, saying it is needed to protect northern Israeli communities from attacks by Hezbollah. And still with our news, explosions rocked Damascus Tuesday as the French President Emmanuel Macron met with his Syrian counterpart in a landmark visit. Macron had entered the presidential palace to meet with the Syrian president, Ahmad al-Shara, when the explosions happened near his hotel. The French president's office said he was safe and his visit to Syria is still continuing. The French President Emmanuel Macron had landed in Syria Monday in the first visit to Damascus by European Union head of state since rebels toppled Bashar al-Assad in 2024. Macron will hold a working dinner before further meetings on Tuesday. And still with more news, Hamas announced Monday the dissolution of the body that has governed the Gaza Strip for nearly 2 decades, clearing the way for a technocratic committee to administer the territory. The move marks a significant political shift by Hamas, which has run Gaza since 2007 after winning legislative elections from the Palestinian movement Fatah the previous year. Since the ceasefire took effect in Gaza last October between Hamas and Israel, the group has repeatedly said it is prepared to step aside from day-to-day governance, but the issue of its disarmament remains unresolved. We take a short break and we'll be back to begin further in-depth discussions on today's topic and the recent developments with the Hamas file. Do stay tuned.
Hamas announced Monday the dissolution of the body that has governed the Gaza Strip for nearly 2 decades, clearing the way for a technocrat committee to administer the territory. Hamas said the head of the government's emergency committee had decided to dissolve the committees to facilitate the administrative and governmental transition to the National Committee for the Administrations of Gaza. The NCAG, currently based in Cairo, was created by the Board of Peace that U.S. President Donald Trump established when he brokered the ceasefire in October 2025. The NCAG said it was ready to govern Gaza. Hamas and other Palestinian factions have held talks in Cairo with mediators to narrow differences, particularly over the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire. The second phase, which was to involve Hamas's disarmament and gradually withdrawal of Israel's forces from Gaza, has been stalled for months. Israeli forces have actually expanded their presence in Gaza in recent months, taking control of nearly 70% of territory. Meanwhile, the violence continues in Gaza despite the ceasefire.
Welcome back, and still with you and today's episode of Inside the Middle East. And as we said earlier today, we discussed the recent developments with the Hamas file, and delighted now to be joined live over Zoom by our guest, Ms. Haneen Hazem, member of the General Union of the Palestinian Organization. Ms. Haneen, a very good afternoon to you, ma'am.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Now, let's discuss the recent developments regarding the situation in the Hamas organization. Hamas has said it announced the dissolution of the body that has governed the Gaza Strip for nearly 2 decades, and this clears the way for a technocratic committee to administer the territory according to their announcement. How do you see this, Ms. Haneen?
Absolutely. It's a submission, and it's an implementation, a practical implementation to the peace summit that has been held in the Egyptian country where it was held in Sharm el-Sheikh, of course, led by the
yes.
Egyptian presidency and the whole Egyptian team, of course, led by President Abdel Fattah and his staff, whether in diplomats or political positions. And this, of course, further validates and reinforces that nothing would have been happening or taking place without the Egyptian role, actually,
yes.
as a mediator or as a mediator of the peace. And this is the first step in the second phase of the peace agreement. And Hamas is showing or resubmitting also to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, that is the only formal and the solid presentation of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian land. So hopefully Hamas is going back to the firmware and to the formal framework that the Palestinian people and the Palestinian Authority is operating from. And by this, we are throwing the ball in the Israeli court. Let's see if they actually stick to their part of the agreement.
Now, Ms. Haneen, of course, as the announcement said, this clears the way for a technocratic committee to administer the territory. What exactly is meant by a technocratic committee, and what responsibilities would such a body likely have?
Absolutely. So this is a more inclusive or a presentation from the whole of the fabric of the Palestinian population, of course, whether in the Gaza Strip or the Western Bank or the whole of the Palestinians in the diaspora as well. So the technocratic presence or technocratic government would mean that it's not just for a certain faction to represent the people in the Gaza, but the Gaza Strip, of course, but for different armies and different backgrounds to represent the Palestinian people and to take part, allowing for academics, allowing for people with backgrounds
expertise. Yes.
Exactly, to take on not just people with long presence in the authority or long presence in the ministers or whatever, because that was the norm until now, that people have been for an elongated period of ruling to be present.
Right.
This is a more mature and a more intentional picking and selection of those who will be leading the administration, even if it's a temporary administration. But again, it's more inclusive and it's more aware, and more expertise are being presented, and of course leading the government for the current time, inshallah.
Now, Ms. Haneen, Hamas says it is willing to step aside from the day-to-day governance, but the issue of disarmament still remains unresolved. Now, how challenging is this issue for any future political settlement?
Again, it's the excuse that will remain, because Netanyahu said that, and the Israelis are saying that Gaza is no longer a threat to the Israelis, given that they have expanded their control, the military presence, of course, on ground, not just by air or by sea. Their presence is now even on the ground, has been expanded. And needless to say that Hamas has actually facilitated this, maybe on the surface, or what's being broadcasted to the news or through the media, that Hamas is stepping down and we are allowing for a diplomatic and a political agreement to take place and so on. But we all know that this step hasn't been made without an actual airtight agreement and alignment with the Israelis, unfortunately. And even if on the surface Hamas is not present as we used to see them, they are still present because Israel will always need an excuse to do all the aggression that they exert upon the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. And Hamas is the easiest and the most cheap way to attack the Palestinians from within. So they will remain the agents for Israeli presence in the Gazan grounds. And maybe on the surface it appears something, but on the actuality or the actual reality of what's being implemented on the ground, Hamas will still have its military presence, and they will not step down just so easily. Let's not, I don't want to say let's not be too optimistic, but we are in hopes that we are reaching an actual full implementation of what's being promised verbally.
I understand indeed. Ms. Haneen, now let's talk a bit about how this announcement could also affect ongoing ceasefire efforts, ongoing ceasefire negotiations, specifically over the future of Gaza.
Nonsense. I don't want to use a less diplomatic terminology to describe this. It has been, I believe, formally announced that the ceasefire is since October. Until then, no actual ceasefire was held. During or right after and when they declared the ceasefire, it hasn't stopped the bombardment, the airstrikes, the aggression, the military strikes. It hasn't stopped for a single second, actually. But rather, the aggression had escalated to a wider coverage in the land and to a more aggressive attacking to the people and their presence. And the aggression, how can I say? They are actually very proud and they're very shameless in the casualties that they're causing and the use of the military weapons that they're using. They're just showcasing that they are capable of everything and they're capable of violating all laws without being held accountable for any of the aggressions or the violations that are being exerted. So ceasefire is merely on paper. It's merely broadcasted and propaganda in the media, but in actual reality, it's not implemented. But rather, they always find an excuse to exert even further violations and more aggression towards the Palestinian people, who are all civilians, by the way.
Yes.
We have factions, we have some armed resistance, but again, it's civilians versus very heavy material, very heavy military presence on the other side, with very heavy support from whether the US or the other allies that are supporting Israel, whether financially or giving them the coverage that they need in the international presence, and excuses, whether in terms of the injustice or in the courts or in the violations that they commit, covering up Netanyahu and his war crimes. It's endless. It's endless.
Ms. Haneen, this actually leads me to my next question. How do you see this announcement being received by regional and international partners? What are their expectations? What are their reactions, especially with the conditions now that might influence external parties, also working towards placing a new government to lead the country?
Yeah, the public opinion is very fed up and they're very furious with the leadership or the governments and their take on the never-ending aggression of aggression is again a very light and very diplomatic use of and description of what Israel has been exerting and expressing against the Palestinian people. The people are fed up, the governments are fed up, but again everyone is trying to withhold and stand trying to implement their plans and their personal agendas and their personal benefits. We are seeing some shifts in the directions. Europeans are not anymore buying the Israeli or the American support to the Israelis and all the aggression that's being exerted. We're seeing shifts in the region as well. We've seen how Yemen has been steadfast in the opposition of the Israeli strikes. We're seeing what's been happening in Iran and the shifts in the escalation and the cascading of what's happening. We're seeing shifts in the Turkey. We're seeing Turkey opposition. We're seeing shifts and escalation also in the Lebanese land. So the whole region is يعني moving back and forth, and everyone is trying to do their end of this, and everyone is trying to actually, I don't know, we've seen how Iran has actually, when they يعني receive the missions coming for the
yes.
yeah, exactly, for the talks, and how they're receiving, and every targeted speech is being used. يعني very subliminal and very subtle communication is being spread in a very diplomatic way. But the use of words, the use of statements, the use of presence, everything is speaking very loudly.
Yes,
just recently, Mr. Abdel Fattah has launched, and يعني the Octagon. Again, every move is very strong, whether in words and in subtle presence and in subtle messages that are being conveyed. It's endless. The warfare is not just military, it's diplomatic, it's political, it's on the ground with the people. Everyone is very, very strong with their aggression, opposition to the aggression that the Israelis are exerting. We've seen Hassan, the national team, or the Egyptian national team, they very proudly raised the Palestinian flag.
And Ms. Haneen, this actually leads me, yes,
all powers.
Yes, indeed, that from the very beginning, Egypt has constantly called for a diplomatic and political resolution to any conflict that is going on throughout the region. This has been a steadfast position of Egypt that diplomacy, political discussion are the only way to get out of any conflict or reach any sort of peace. And that is the main aim, to have peace and security in the region and the Middle East as a whole. Now, as you said, Egypt has also played a very big role with regards to hosting talks, as well as hosting ceasefire agreements and understandings, etc. Do you see this announcement now by Hamas creating new momentum for reconciliation between Fatah and Hamas? And what are some of the obstacles that still stand in the way of this, in your opinion?
Absolutely. Egypt has pushed very hardly and very strongly towards this reconciliation to take place.
Yes.
Hamas is stepping down from their very stubborn position and stance against accepting to come back to the PLO, or to put their hands in the hands of the remaining factions, not just Fatah as the leader or the most present faction in the Palestinian fabric.
Yes.
We can assume, again, in a very optimistic setup, that this step down is hopefully creating room and space for reconciliation. But again, reconciliation would require Hamas to take accountability for their very shameful and very shameless at the same time acts and violations to the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian land, what they've been exerting since 2007, and what we've been witnessing on the ground and on media, and how this coup that they've actually done since then has caused the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian justice to retrograde, to fall down, and we've just shed more blood. Exactly. They've caused people so much, actually, to just be buried or to be water under the bridge.
And Ms. Haneen,
they need
in
to
the
be
near future,
accountable.
Yes, in the near future, a very important issue, in your opinion, how important is it to have, this unified Palestinian leadership in order to advance the Palestinian cause internationally, especially, as you said, it has been, retrograde or dissolved, so to speak, or disillusioned over the last few years?
Well, they do need to step back and to reconcile and to be held accountable for everything they've done, and to embrace what we've been calling for, to be all working and performing under the PLO and the Palestinian Authority as a single formal presentation of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian land. The Palestinian Authority had worked very hardly to gain recognition and acknowledgement from the international presence to be resonated or to be dealt with as a Palestinian state. The statehood has caused us so much, so we cannot actually jeopardize this just to gain or to benefit our own agenda. So they need to choose their leadership very wisely, and to be very diplomatic and to be Palestinian, truly Palestinian in their beliefs and in their يعني agenda, and to fall back into the righteous framework and to operate within their colleagues, hopefully for the better of the Palestinian people.
Indeed.
And
Speaking
the
about the
Palestinian
Palestinian people, Ms. Haneen, of course, the situation on the ground, the humanitarian situation on the ground is still extremely dire, and we're seeing every day still efforts to have aid delivered for the desperate needs of the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip. Now, how could such an announcement, in your opinion, affect decisions related to the delivery of humanitarian assistance, for example? How could it improve the situation for the Palestinians on the ground, the civilians, as you were saying?
Absolutely. By the least, it would eliminate the excuses that the Israelis are using to prolong or to يعني to add more steps of security checks, investigations, and inspections that they carry out for all the aid يعني missions or the convoys that are released or trying to enter through the Egyptian يعني effort. Hamas, unfortunately, even if this has not been formally يعني disseminated or circulated in the media, but Hamas used to actually capture such aid and يعني store it and sell it to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip, which is very shameful. And يعني but anyways, this is their method to يعني generate revenue for their own people and for own benefits. So hopefully by this we will eliminate this waste or this leakage in the resources, and we will eliminate the steps or the time being taken for such aid vessels or such aid convoys to actually reach the Palestinian people who are in desperate need of such aid, and eliminating, of course, the causes or the excuses that the Israelis are using to hold such.
And to build further on that, Ms. Haneen, now there are immediate priorities aside from the delivery of humanitarian aid. We are talking about the issue of the reconstruction of Gaza, and from the very beginning, the Egyptian state has called for the ceasefire, for the delivery of humanitarian aid, and for the reconstruction of Gaza, for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, in order to make it once again inhabitable for the people and the Palestinians. How important do you see this, and who will be in charge of this in the coming steps?
Absolutely. Hopefully this stepping down and the progression in the peace agreement will facilitate further the establishment of such reconstruction to take place. I would believe it should actually be a joint administration. Of course, Egypt shall oversee such implementation, because Egypt is the only and the sole how can we say party who's actually having the Palestinian interest at heart and mind, of course. We should see stakeholders from the Palestinian administration as well in a joint effort, and some people from the international presence as well.
Yes.
Exactly, to facilitate this further and to eliminate any excuses from the Israelis and their allies, of course.
Right, we'll have to leave it at that. I'd like to thank you very, very much, our dear guest, Ms. Haneen Hazem, member of the General Union of the Palestinian Women's Organization. Many thanks, ma'am, for your time and your insight, and for joining us this afternoon on our episode of Inside the Middle East. I'm Angie Meher. Thank you for watching.